You know, these band directors are amazing, and in the past few years since I've been working with the band directors, I'm just so amazed at what they do and how well organized that they are and how they can pull all of these things together when sometimes it's difficult just to ask your son or daughter to clean their room. They could do things like this. It's truly magical. So I want to thank all the band directors because you do such great work. And parents, thank you for being there with your kids from the second they started in the 6th grade and they picked up the horn and you thought, oh no, what have I done? Thanks for sticking with them. You've done great things. At this time, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you another one of our co-chairs, to introduce our final conductor.
Thank you very much. I'm the luckiest guy on the planet to get to share time with talented musicians like this. As we go along, I hope I may tell you just a little bit about the selections that we're performing. I think sometimes when you don't have program notes, it's somewhat helpful, particularly in many cases it's new works that you have not heard before. That was American Fanfare. The composer is John Wasson. The piece was originally written as an opener for a touring brass group called the Dallas Brass. We have the Canadian Brass, we have the Boston Brass, we have the Dallas Brass. They're all great musicians. And this particular piece was done for them. And it was so popular and so well received that directors and conductors said, please, they went to the composer, make a version of that we can play with bands. So what you heard is a reconstruction of that piece. And actually our trumpets, our horns, our trombones, and tubas were actually playing the original parts that were written for the professional musicians that are a part of that touring group. We're going to kind of go back in time and at the same time remain in this century, if that's possible. Jan Vonderloos, who's a Dutch composer, was asked to write a piece for a music festival in Japan. The setting was a town named Nimasato. And Jan started thinking about the title of the town and the words, and all of a sudden somehow he made a connection between Sasato and Sasato, who was a Renaissance composer from the 1500s. So he wrote a piece that's kind of a marriage, if you will, of the Renaissance style of music with a certain degree of what we consider to be music of the 20th century. And the result is a piece that he entitled Nimasato. thing we talked about with the students was the fact that we forget sometimes when we look back at ancient music that we think of that as somehow being historical or classical, forgetting that that music was the popular music of the day. And I was so bold to say to them that in 1550, if there'd been MTV, this is the music that you would have heard on MTV. This is Nima Sasaka. We've already discovered tonight, earlier in the program, that many times that composers will take their inspiration from literature. And our next selection is certainly one of those pieces. The composer is German. His name is Rolf Rudine. In fact, we had to learn a little bit German because this is actually a European publication. All the musical markings, or many of the musical markings that we see generally in English, or in some kind of Latin derivative of language, are all in German in this particular piece. So we had to make sure that we were on the same page in terms of what some of those strange words meant. But the piece is based on an Irish legend, the Dreams of Angus. And Prince Angus, in this legend, had a reoccurring dream. And in the dream, there was a beautiful maiden, and she played flute. And in the dream, he would awaken from the dream, and he began to have this vision to go on a quest that surely this lady really lived, and that would be the love of his life. The piece in whole is quite massive. We're doing the first movement for you this evening, which I think you will find to be very descriptive. Essentially, this is the dream. And in the dream, he begins to envision going on a quest to find the lady of his love. This is the dream of Angus. Some people, excuse me, some people seem to think that all composers are male and dead. We're going to disprove both of those right now. Carolyn Dreamer is a wonderful, very vibrant composer that is writing for a number of different mediums. She's not a band composer. She happens to be a very wonderful composer that occasionally writes for bands. I like that. This particular piece is entitled Early Light. And perhaps if you'll give me a moment, I can give you a little bit of background that will help you in kind of the way you want to listen. It's incredibly high energy. It's very vibrant music. I gave her a call after I had studied this piece for a while just to visit with her, and she shared some information about it. She wrote this when she was quite young. She was about 24 when she wrote this piece, which was been about 5 years ago. And she said that she based it primarily on childhood memories. Near the end, you're going to think it just sounds like a patriotic flag-waving piece, but that's not the case at all. And essentially, she said that she has so many childhood memories that were very special to her, and many of those she tried to incorporate into this piece. If you listen very carefully, and I underline very, you're going to hear a little bit of Row, Row, Row Your Boat, Three Blind Mice, and such childlike tunes. But they're very carefully crafted. If you expect them to be obvious, you better listen more carefully. But more important, near the end, you're going to hear what becomes a rather bold statement of fragments from the Star Spangled Banner. And in fact, at the very beginning, if you think of singing the Star Spangled Banner, if you think of the words by the dawn's early light, the intervals that are present in dawn's early light, in essence, is the germ on which this piece of music is built. So if you listen for that, I think that will be helpful too. The reason the Star Spangled Banner, she said one of her favorite memories was to going to baseball games with her dad. And she knew when they played the Star Spangled Banner, it was time for play ball. And so at one point near the end, you will hear a crack of the bat that signals it's time to play ball. This is quite a ride for all of us. It's high energy from beginning to end, so strap in. This is Early Light. become rather fond of that piece. I've done it several times recently, and I will tell you very honestly that this group of musicians, I did it with an intercollegiate band made up of university level students back in October. And this group of high school musicians on stage absolutely matched, in some ways, excelled the performance of those college students. I think that perhaps the most frustrating thing about these experiences, we come together roughly yesterday evening, and we rehearsed so intently for 9 hours, and these students on stage could not have given more and been more focused or shared more of their talent with me and with the music that we prepared for you this evening. And I think that the sad thing about it is, once you get to the concert, man, this concert goes by fast. The fun's almost over. But boy, has it been fun. I said earlier, I'll say again, I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet. And I get to share time with wonderful people like this before you. Speaking of these wonderful people before you, I think it's important for you to realize, there's been several comments about the importance of arts and so forth, and if I chose to, I could get them to lock the doors and I could spend about 2 hours talking about those things. I would prefer not to do that, and I'm sure you would not be interested in me doing that either. But let me say this. I'm blessed, again, with traveling a great deal to do these kind of groups. I can count on less fingers than I have on one hand the number of places in this nation that have music education as special as you have it here in Clark County. I say that number one as a yes. I say that as a compliment and praise to the administration who supports this program, to the directors who breathe beauty and life into the art of music with these students, and to you, the parents and taxpayers of this community who feel that the arts are important and there needs to be a place for them in our schools. And I could give countless anecdotal observations that give credit to that, both from a discipline, from intellectual standpoints, from the interaction with the brain. I can go on and on. But I'd rather share one other story very briefly because it speaks so eloquently to the value and importance of music. A good friend of mine is John Bourgeois, who just retired as a conductor of the United States Marine Band. Right after the Berlin Wall went down, one of the first groups to go to Russia was the United States Marine Band and did a tour. And he has some wonderful stories to tell about that. But the most moving one to me, they were playing in Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg once again. At the end of a concert, a very elderly lady came up, a Russian lady, and through a translator said to John, "Thank you for coming. When the bands are playing, the guns are silent." I think that speaks dramatically to the importance of art in our lives and the importance of art to these students. It's so fragile. I urge you to be vigilant, to be positive, to be focused, so that these students continue to have this experience. Your younger students will continue to have the experience, but more important, that these students, children, when they go into school, have that experience. So I hope that you will share with me that belief and that challenge. And again, I congratulate you and applaud you for what you have here. And I challenge you to keep it special.
Through these past 2 days, Mr. Floyd has taught us such musical techniques as zoom and ooh and 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. So we figured it would be appropriate if we got him a Taco Bell dog with a ball. Now, right now, Floyd is going, wow, a dog. Never gotten one of these before. Well, we also got him a plaque. Wonderful.
Just to let you guys know on a little secret that the plaque says. It says, Mr. Floyd, for your unique and creative ways in making us feel, play, and sound like a better ensemble. Your trio of players, brass, woodwind, and percussion, Honor Band 2001.
In conducting workshops, I tell participants when I'm teaching conducting, I'll get right around and say, I want to tell you now the absolute secret of being a great conductor. Of course, they all want to hear that. If you want to be a better conductor, the important thing is to get better players. Whether I am or not, I guess time will tell, but with these people, I felt like a great conductor. We have one more selection for you. John Philip Sousa is a name probably all know. People relate that to marches and him being the March King and all of those things, but sometimes it's forgotten that in his day, in the early part of the 20th century, he was a superstar. He was a multi-millionaire. He was world famous. His band toured. He hired the absolute best musicians that money could buy. When the band came to town, the only thing we could relate to now would be probably a touring rock concert of some kind, where people are standing outside begging for a seat to get in. That's the way it was with the Sousa Band. And one of the draws was, of course, the marches that he played. But he didn't play the marches the way they were published. There was always something a little bit different, a little twist, a little subtlety that he put into place. And for decades, we kind of just thought the published version was the way it was supposed to be. A gentleman named Frank Byrne, the United States Marine Band, has done a tremendous amount of research and has attempted in a very special way to authenticate the performance practices that were part of the Sousa Band. So we're going to close with the Sousa March. It's called the Gallant Seventh. And we've done our best to integrate into this march many of the kinds of things that would have been a part of a Sousa Band performance. So I encourage you to kind of just close your eyes, sit back, and pretend it's about 1905 and the Sousa Band is in town.